What's up, my friends? Welcome to my channel. My name is PJ. Today I wanted to talk to you about how to get out of the funk. Personally, I've been going through this weird season of feeling out of sorts, feeling not in my groove, feeling out of my element, and just really generally just being in a funk. And I usually am a very optimistic person. I rarely ever go through seasons like this. So this is really weird. This is really out of character for me. But it's been the most prolonged season that's been like this for me in my life. I would literally say, I don't remember any other time in my life where for such a prolonged time, now about 4 months, I've been going through a season like this where I'm out of sorts, groggy, foggy, have brain fog. Not brain fog in terms of I just haven't gotten sleep or anything like that. It's just that it's like a brain fog where I just don't feel clear. I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't feel like I'm in my element anymore. And it's the worst and the weirdest feeling I have personally ever experienced, because I love feeling productive. I love feeling on purpose. I love feeling on mission. And all of a sudden, I don't feel any of those things anymore. And I kind of don't really know where things went wrong. I mean, I kind of do. And we're going to talk about trying to figure that out for ourselves. But I do know that this has been just a weird season in my life. Now, not having gone through something like this before, I had to put together or figure out some resources, some things, some tools that would help me get out of it, because it feels like hell, personally, and I don't like being in it. And maybe part of the lesson sometimes for us is to be in it, but I feel like, and learn the lesson of that darkness, and see the fruit in that. But cue Trevor Hall album Fruitful Darkness right here. But sometimes we're just meant to get out of it. It's once it's been for me, it's been 4 months of this, there comes a point in time where you're okay, I've been dwelling in this depression and this sadness for long enough, in this state for long enough, and it's time for me to get the heck out of here. And for me, I've been trying to figure out how to do that. I haven't personally known or used any resources related to depression or things like that before in my life, because I feel like I've never gone through that. Thankfully, and I'm sure I've been very privileged and blessed to have gone 28 years without a serious season of depression. But nonetheless, I didn't really have the tools because of that, because of not having gone through a season like this. I didn't really have the tools to help me deal with this. And I remember back in, I wasn't going to say back in the days, but back in 2020, 2 years ago, or 2019, I realized, or I became familiar with this term codependency. And up until that point, I had not heard that term. And I remember, this is kind of unrelated, but related, bear with me. I remember finding about that term, reading books about it. It was such a rejuvenating revelation to realize that there is such a thing, and that I am struggling with it, and that there are books on it. There are whole, topics and forums and YouTube channels on this topic that I can look into and learn from, and realizing that there's this thing, that I just didn't have a term for it. It's kind of like if you have just this concept, but you haven't labeled it yet. So it's almost not real. It's just a bundle of things. But when you put the term on it, when you put the label on it, all of a sudden it becomes real. And that's true for diseases. That's true for all kinds of things. But it doesn't mean that that's always a good thing. But sometimes it does help to label it, figure out what it is, and then be able to address it. And it's you can't heal it until you name it sometimes. But in this situation, I could not figure out what this is. I would look up depression, or whatever. I would look up different things and just try to find something, some resource that's boom, the moment I hear it, it resonates. I'm oh, this is it. This is what I'm going through. Nothing. I couldn't find, because it was a jumbled up, it was a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of brain fog, a little bit of mild depression, a little bit of just a bunch of random stuff together. So I still haven't found this one thing that you can say, oh, this is this is it, this is what I'm going through. Rumination is the closest thing that I found, like psychological term that kind of describe what I'm going through, but it's not the whole thing. But nonetheless, because I couldn't find this term, and then be like, okay, like what people have said about this, what are the solutions to this? Because I couldn't find that, I had to source for myself. It's kind of like I'm trying to like make a recipe, and I had to get a little bit of, this ingredient from here, a little bit of this ingredient from here. And hopefully when I combine them, it turns into a magic potion that heals me. And I feel like so far in the past 4 months, I have been able to do that little bit at a time, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm pretty sure that's the song. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. A little bit at a time, I've been able to get myself to a point where I'm like, okay, I can stand back on my own 2 feet again and feel like I am myself again, which to me is like the best feeling. It's like the feeling of like I am in my element, I am in my purpose, I am a functioning member of society again, I am feeling happy, rejuvenated, and just like feel like, it's like if this is like my highest self version, usually I try to be like this close to it. Maybe like some days I'm just like all the way, I feel like I'm showing up in the world as my highest self. But most of the time I'm trying to like, this was before the previous 4 months, trying to be like super close to it. And I think I feel like I pretty much succeeded at that. But I feel like for the past 4 months I've been like here, right? So I feel like through these practices that I'm going to share with you, I've been able to like every day take a step, literally like one day at a time, like they say in 12 steps. That's another thing. I have never really struggled with like any sort of major addiction or anything like that. But I have read this book by Russell Brand called Recovery, and it's on the 12 steps. And I love the 12 steps. Like just hearing him describe the steps, totally resonate, totally loved, everything. And like their motto in 12 steps programs, from what I've heard, is one day at a time. And so just one day at a time, trying to move myself back and back closer to like my homeostasis, which is like being this close to my higher self. And that's just like how I see it. That's how I feel about it. But fortunately, and thank God, through prayer, meditation, contemplation, reading books, I've been able to kind of put myself back together, so to speak. And I'm sure that, I don't look forward to it, but I'm sure that in life, I'm going to probably go through other seasons similar to this. I don't want to, but I'm sure that's life. I'm going to go through it. We're going to go through these kind of seasons. But it's good to know that I now have these tools so that I can put myself back together in like matter of a day, maybe, or a week, or, 2 weeks, but not like 4 months like it's been this time. And by combining these tools, I can put myself back together and be ready to go. So let's, I think that's, without, further ado and without talking more about it, let's just jump into what these tools are. All right. The first tool that we're going to talk about is this. It's getting present to the moment. That sounds kind of vague maybe, but it's just being here, like being in this now. Being. I sometimes don't even say like get present or be present. I just say be. Because that to me kind of explains what I'm going for. It's like, I'm not even trying to change. Like sometimes I think when you think of like being present, you think of like changing in some shape or form, like what you're focusing on. And that has this, time and place and its purpose. But like for me, being is even more simple than that, where it's like, I literally am like, whatever I'm doing, like if I'm like staring over there, I'll just try to like, just continue staring or doing whatever I'm doing, but just bring mindfulness to it. And maybe I don't try to get super like woo-woo and be like, I'm just going to stare at that point until it like fades into the nothingness and like, unravels, like nothing like that, nothing crazy like that. Sometimes I can tend to get super like mystical sometimes, and I need to bring myself down. And I honestly think that tendency is what got me in this place. But I'm trying to hone that, reel that in and just be more in the moment and be more present. And getting present to the moment is the first step, first key, first point that has really helped me get out of this, depression, this funk, and get back in my groove, really, and get out of this state of like whatever. I don't really have terms for it, but like to me, it's kind of like it's like a depression, it's like a funk for sure, a rut, whatever you want to call it, but definitely something that I've been going through, and it's just been, I feel like I'm in like quicksand, it's like I make some progress and I keep going further down, some progress, But fortunately, by combining these tools, I have made massive progress, and I'm super happy to say that. But anyways, being present, getting present to the moment is the first step. And like I said, it's being. So if I'm looking over there, or if I'm like doing whatever, I try to just be with that. I don't try to change. Like, I'm not like, okay, let me focus now. Like, I'm looking at this like external hard drive on my desk right now. And like, I'm not trying to be like, okay, let me look at the logo like really closely and observe that super intentionally. Or like, there are practices of being present like that. But for me, it's just like, okay, however I am being right now, just be like, don't try to like zoom in, don't try to change my focus, nothing like that. I'm just being. Basically, all I'm doing is bringing awareness to what I'm doing. And that awareness alone can like shift everything. Awareness for a lot of people in and of itself is rejuvenating, is healing. And I found that sometimes just bringing awareness to my day-to-day life literally fills me up with so much motivation, inspiration, energy, and rejuvenation, and just clarity and confidence. Confidence is like the main thing that I feel like I've been lacking. I usually am like, pretty confident, I would say, like and comfortable with who I am. But I just haven't felt that in this past 4 months, which, honestly, I think the gift of that is to be able to kind of understand another version of life, because there are so many layers to life and so many different levels of life that we can live at, and so I may have never been like super in a dark, depression, but now because of this season, I have some more of an understanding of what that feels like. So I'm grateful for that. It has given me like a higher empathy, I feel like, for understanding what, so many people go through. And it's opened my heart, and I feel like suffering like that sometimes is like the best heart opener, and it's like, it hurts so much, you don't want to see anybody else hurt that much, And so I think there are gifts in it, but I do feel like I keep thinking of this meme of this kid. I'll put it up right here. I'll put it up there, but basically it's this meme of this kid, and the first frame is like, it's zoomed in and it seems like somebody has a boot on his face, like someone's crushing, like is about to crush his head. And then it zooms out and it shows that his hand is in this boot and he's pressing his own face to the ground. And I'm like, that is the most accurate representation of what I've been doing. And I think so many of us like do that to ourselves, because it's like, there are those cases of depression that are like for real, like legit, depression, and you may need to like seek clinical treatments and advice to get out of them and whatever, you need to do. But for some of us, sometimes it's like it's our own doing, which honestly kind of feels worse, but at the same time, at least it's empowering to know that, okay, I'm doing this to myself so that I can reverse it. But it's like these habits of mind that we have, these habits of being, these habits of thinking, these ways of just like going about our day that put us in those states. And to me, it's like, I'm pressing my own head, bro. Like I am doing this to myself. And even though I know that, like, it's still hard to snap out of it, because these habits become so habitual. Like for me, it's like ruminating on thoughts. And like, it could be positive thoughts, but then I'll be like ruminating on it. Like a good example of that is like, we just talked about being present, right? I'll be like, be present, be present, be present, be present, be present. It's like that just gave me trauma just saying that. But like I'll be like that, and it's like a ruminating. So it's not a negative thought, but it's like a positive thought that I'll just like repeat. And it's like, instead of actually doing the thing, I'll be like ruminating. So that's kind of my trick, or my thing, my downfall. That's the thing that gets me. That's my boot on my face. But for you, may be different. So what I'm trying to say here is like that some of us go through these seasons of depression that are like super intense, and there are many factors that play into that. But some of us are just doing this to ourselves. Like there's no like loss in the family, nothing major. It's just like, we're just ruminating. We have these habits of thoughts that are getting us in that state. So in those cases, we can choose to lift off that boot from our own face, whatever that may be for you. So for me, like I said, it's that rumination, but and when I'm saying like be present, like for me, it's like, okay, actually be present, like actually do what you're saying. So that may be super unrelatable. I don't know. This is actually why I couldn't really find that much like content or books or resources on like kind of what I'm going through to explain, because I feel like it's so weird, and I'm just like, I repeat something like over and over again, like on a loop, and make myself crazy with that. But I just feel like for me, it's about doing the thing, like whatever I'm actually doing or wanting to do, actually doing that thing versus thinking about it. It's like I've actually tried this at bowling. When I'm bowling, I'll be like, focus on the middle line. Yeah. Like the arrows on the floor, right where you are. Focus on the middle line, focus on the middle line, focus on the middle line. I'm like, dude, don't keep saying it. Just actually do it. So like actually just focus, like be in the moment, be in the present moment, like actually focus on what you're doing. And that has helped me a ton. So the first point was being present. A good book on this, the best book on this, honestly, is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I have mentioned this book, I feel like, a ton of times in many of my different videos. And a shameless plug right here also is a video of my own that's called Getting Present Through the Body, or like the body as a gateway into the present moment, which is, I think, is a horrible title now. It's like, who's going to search that ever? But I feel like that video does a good job at talking about how we can use our bodily sensations, or whatever we're feeling sense-wise in our body right now, using that as a gateway into the present moment. And I think it's a super powerful for, I use the Enneagram a lot, actually. So for an Enneagram 9, like myself, one of the main ways for Enneagram type 9s, the type 9s on the Enneagram, if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, I have a video on how to find your type. I'll link it up there, so you can check that out. But there are like some pretty awesome introductions on it online. You can find those. I have one on my channel. I think it's about like what is the Enneagram. But nonetheless, on the Enneagram, I'm type 9. For type 9s, it's really helpful to use their body, because they're like one of the most out of touch with their bodies kind of types. It's like 9s and 5s, I believe. And for these two types, it's really helpful to get in the sensations of their body. And so in that video, I talk about how to do that, how to tune in to the sensations of your body in this moment. And my last video, where I talked about the book Way of the Superior Man, that book also talks about the importance of, specifically for men with a masculine essence, to be grounded in their body, because it's a very grounding thing to just tune in, be here, like allow your body. Because a lot of times it's like we live from the neck up. It's just like head dominated. We'll be thinking, our work is like, on the computer, we're thinking. So it's like knowledge work, but we're totally out of touch with our body. It's almost like we don't even have a body. Like sometimes I imagine like it's like a ghost, almost like it's like a ghost figure of our body, and like the only physical element is our head. So it's like a physical head on a body of a ghost. Sometimes I feel like that's how we go throughout our days, super out of touch, super just completely disconnected. And so that video helps you. Also things like martial arts, dancing, yoga. I think martial arts in particular, like for me, I took Kung Fu, which was really just like sparring. The school was a Kung Fu school, but it was like sparring and MMA type of stuff. I say MMA, someone who's actually a fighter, like, dude, what are you talking about? But no, it was like, striking, all kinds of takedowns, all kinds of stuff. But to me, that was like one of the most physically grounding practices, because it's like, yoga is great, weightlifting is great, running is phenomenal. But I feel like nothing is like that skin on skin contact in that like what feels like a life or death situation. And it just like brings you fully in this moment, fully in your body. And so if you haven't ever tried martial arts, I highly recommend it. It's very grounding, it's very calming, and that's great advice for myself. I just discovered another tool. But all right, I think that's good enough for point number 1. Let me look at my notes real quick here. yeah, just focus on the simplicity of this moment, right? So like our mind can make the world super complex, but our focus, when it's focused in this present moment, can make it very simple. And my 2 videos ago, I talked about the life-changing benefits of the mindset of keep it simple for myself. That's one of the points in this video as well, but keep it simple. Focus on the simplicity of the moment. Super beneficial for someone who's been ruminating, going through this state. So the first point to get ourselves out of this funk, out of this depression, is to just be more present in the moment. Now, the present moment may kind of suck, right? Because if you're going through all this like emotional baggage and dealing with all these things coming up for you, it may be hard to be present and be in the moment. It's easier to escape and just kind of go in your head and live in this fantasy land. But it's not the most beneficial. And my most popular video that unfortunately got taken down due to copyright, which, I'm gonna make myself depressed if I think about it, but not really, because everything happens for a reason. But nonetheless, that video, the letting go technique, that book right there, the letting go, the book by David Hawkins. So that book talks about the technique of just being with your emotions, like whatever you're feeling right now, being with that. And that's actually what transforms it. So like if you're going through depression, if you're going through sadness, grief, whatever, the tendency to want to avoid it and escape it is actually not what's going to make it go away. If it's super intense, like major trauma, like it is actually kind of helpful to escape it for a while until you can come back later. And when the emotions have subsided just a little bit in terms of like intensity, not in the moment, maybe you can't do it, but later maybe you can. Coming back and being with it, like whatever is coming up for you, being with it, because the way emotions work is like they move through you, but if you try to escape it, they cling onto you. So feeling it is actually what helps heal it. Feel it to heal it, feel it to release it. So that's kind of like being present with the emotion. So I know that sometimes the present moment may not be pleasant, but we're not being present because it makes it pleasant. We're being present because it helps us be more calm and at ease amidst the chaos, whatever it may be. But just be with the simplicity of the moment, whatever that is. So for me, it's like this camera. I literally am trying to do that right now. Like as I'm talking, I'm trying to be, my energy may seem different to you. Like honestly, like I feel like in a lot of my videos, people have said, close friends have said like, you're just like a different person on camera, you're super in your head. And it's true. But in this case, I feel like my energy is different because I'm just trying to be super present in the moment, like not in my head and like thinking about, because sometimes I try to imagine the viewer behind the camera, but I'm like, dude, like you're literally just talking to a camera in your room. Like it's simple, just keeping it to that simplicity of the moment has been helping me so much. Like I'm literally talking to this inanimate object. It's nothing crazy. So that's super helpful. And I'm sure that whatever circumstance you're in, whether you're at work, whether you're driving, whatever you're doing, just being present. If you're at the gym, being present with what you're doing. Because I know for me, like I can't have a whole workout and then like be like, oh, like I just finished the work. Like, I completely kind of zoned out or listening to my audiobook or music or whatever I'm doing. But just being present with what is super crucial, super helpful. So that's point number 1. Can't say enough good things about it. Honestly, that could be a whole video in and of itself. And maybe I'll make that into a clip. But let's move on and keep the video moving forward to point number 2. Point number 2 is use journaling. Use journaling, journal to help you out. So for me, journaling, as I've been going through this season, journaling has helped me a lot because trying to follow my thoughts just in my head is super ineffective, I feel like, in terms of being able to actually follow it, process it, analyze it, and just putting the pen to paper, which I highly recommend. I don't recommend typing it out, but just putting pen to paper, super beneficial. Just the act of doing that. I think typing doesn't really do that. And I think a lot of people say like, when you're typing it feels perfect, right? Like the notes, just there's no like if you're writing, you can like accidentally like like every letter is not perfect, usually. And it's not, it's like, to me, when I'm writing on paper, it's more relaxing, especially when it's like in a notebook I don't care about. Like, it's more relaxing. I don't care how it looks. I'm just trying to get it out. But when you're typing and then like autocorrect jumps in and it's like, oh, you got this wrong. It's like, dude, I'm not trying to get it right now. I'm just trying to get it out. So I think pen to paper is super beneficial, more beneficial than typing, but whatever, floats your boat. But journaling on what thoughts you're going through, what thoughts you're thinking, what are you going through? Like literally having a conversation with yourself as if you're having a conversation with a third person, a third party, I think is super helpful. I highly recommend it. I wrote down some questions here that I asked myself and that I have asked myself before in my life, but because I have done that before in my life, I knew that these questions for me are super helpful. So they may be helpful for you. So let's go over them real quick. Question number 1, what do you want? So ask yourself. So again, going back to the Enneagram, I'm a type 9 on the Enneagram, and on the Enneagram, the type 9s are notorious for not knowing what they want. So that's kind of like literally their kind of stereotype. It's like they don't know what they want. So if you ask them like, if you're in a group and like they're trying to get consensus of like where people should go eat, like 2 of your friends say, hey, we should go get Panda Express, and one friend says like we should go get Thai food, which Panda is kind of Thai, but anyways, or we should go to Chipotle, and another one's like we should go to Zaxby's. Gosh, I'm like making myself hungry now. But the type 9 in that group is like, oh, whatever you guys want, I'm fine. And it's to a point where they don't even think about what they want, right? But it's more easy for them to know what they don't want. So a question also that you can ask yourself to get clear about what you want is what you don't want. It's like, well, I definitely don't want this kind of lifestyle. Like, I don't like when, like, I'm bad at my sleep schedule. Like, I don't have a good sleep schedule, or like I don't like when I'm not consistent with my exercise routine, or whatever it may be, right? Like it may be easier for you to get clear about what you don't want. So that's the first question, what you want. Ask yourself, what do you want? And I'll say this too here, because this was kind of another question I wrote down, but I feel like these two are actually kind of the same one. This question in a lot of ways is about finding a compelling vision for the future. So what that means is a lot of us, not that the future is ever certain, like literally we can't like predict anything in like 100% accuracy in terms of like, oh, in 5 years I'm going to be like doing this. But there is a saying, which I don't know who is by, but Ali Abdal, who is a YouTuber, great channel by the way. He quotes it a lot. He's like, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And basically what he's talking about is like, dude, like literally like we can plan, like I can make a plan for tomorrow and wake up and like let's say my plan is like, wake up at this time and then go to the gym at this time and do this. Great, right? I wake up, or my alarm doesn't go off. So immediately right there, like I don't wake up at a time that I thought. So like I planned it, but it's not going, the plan is not going. And that's just like a super simple example. But obviously we all know, like with the uncertainties of life, that like our plans don't always come to fruition exactly as we planned them. But the process of planning is super helpful. And so in this case, what you want, or asking yourself, what do you want? And finding that compelling vision of the future, to me is super helpful in terms of clarifying a direction for my life. Because I realized like I used to live a lot of my life in this mindset of like whatever's meant to happen will happen, which is true, right? And again, like type 9s also are, I keep like being that Enneagram dude, like type 9s, but like type 9s, just Enneagram is like spot on. Out of all personality tests or typing systems, like just Enneagram by far is just way superior, because it's both spiritual and psychological. But anyways, the Enneagram talks about how like for 9s, they are notorious for using spiritual kind of sayings and like slapping them on like as like a general thing for like the whole of life. So like I used to use this a lot. what's meant to happen will happen. Great, right? Like, I mean, it's true on a very like spiritual level. But what about things that you're supposed to make happen? Like, it completely doesn't even cross the nine's mind. And some of you watching, that you have the ability to change your future. Like, I literally have the ability to like slap myself like Will Smith, like I have the ability to, hit this light over here. But it's like I have the ability, and these are all horrible examples, but like I have the ability to take action. Now, all the examples I just said were negative actions. I don't know why I just said those negative actions, but I think for dramatic effect, I was using those. But nonetheless, I have the ability to take action. This idea doesn't cross the minds of the nines. So the idea of writing down for myself, where do I want to be in 5 years, right? And like realizing, dude, like, yeah, whatever is meant to happen will happen. That's correct. But doesn't mean that you don't have to, or you don't get to, or you're not able to plan and make a decision about the type of future you want. Create that compelling vision of the future. You can do that, and you can take action on that, and you can make it happen. And, I remember like for a long time, I wanted to have a YouTube channel. Like since college. I'm 28 now, so like when I was 21, when I was 20 and in college, like I remember that's when I was like, kind of had the revelation that I really wanted to have a YouTube channel. Well, 6 or 7 years went by. I started this, I started a channel during the pandemic, so 2020. So I was 26. Going into 27, I was like, dude, like if there's ever been a time to like finally do what you've been wanting to do, I feel like it's now, because it's like, who knows what's going to happen next. So that really like jolted me into action. But I realized doing that, it's like, no one made that happen for me, because it's like this idea of something is going to happen. Whatever's meant to happen will happen. And my YouTube channel will just happen. Like, that literally, it's so dumb to say out loud. And like part of me like is heartbroken that I have to make it happen. Like it's weird because like the type nines, gosh, I feel so annoying right now. But just bear with me with the Enneagram stuff. The Enneagram, guys, I gotta say, like has helped me so much through the season. I didn't add it here as one of the points. But if you are a student of the Enneagram, or even if you're not, like dig into the Enneagram, get a book. If you are looking for recommendations, comment below and I'll let you know some good ones, my favorite ones. The best one I think is like The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Russ Hudson and Don Risso, the book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. That to me is one of the best ones. But nonetheless, the nines on the Enneagram have this thing, Russ Hudson, in one of his audio programs, he says like they have this thing, what he calls a shattered heart. It's almost like they're sad in a way that like the world is not as, it's like they have it's almost like they have a memory of like their true home, which is like in my, belief is with God in heaven. That's like our true home. Like that's our truest state of being. And so it's like they have this memory of what that's supposed to be like and how that feels. But for us, we're like in this world right now. We're in this dimension. And in this dimension, things are not as perfect as they are in heaven. Like heaven could be like the representation or the symbol of perfection, the perfect state. Which in the perfect state, you don't even need to do anything. So I feel like the nines kind of have that memory. So it's like everything that's supposed to happen will happen. And that's true. But in this reality, in this like sweat and blood and guts and dirt, and this reality, you have to like literally roll up your sleeves and like get to work and get stuff done. And that's just part of being here. Like if a baby needs to be changed, like someone needs to change it. Like it's not gonna just happen. I'm definitely not a parent, so I'm just like, I probably don't have the right to say that, but like I feel like that's a good example of just certain things just need to be done. The trash needs to just be taken out. Like it's just not going to happen by itself, And so for me, weirdly enough, like I have to constantly remind myself of that like, yes, everything that's supposed to happen will happen, but that doesn't mean you don't get to take action, or you can't take action, that you cannot influence the direction and the decisions in your life. So going back to that question of what do you want, for me it's about writing out where do I want to be in 5 years. And it doesn't mean everything will exactly play out as I wrote it down and that exactly will be the case, but again, the planning process is indispensable. It's very beneficial. It's super helpful. And so the planning process itself of writing that gives you a sense of aim, direction. And Jordan Peterson always talks about the importance of having that direction, having that purpose, having that, and Joe Dispenza also, which both are phenomenal individuals. But Joe Dispenza, he's like the one that says the compelling vision of the future, the term the compelling vision of the future a lot. He says that a lot. It's the importance of having that. So that 5-year plan or the 3-year plan, it gives you that, or at least it gives me that. So for me, as I'm going through this chaos, getting clear about where do I want to end up miraculously has this effect of like, okay, I remember where I want to go now. It's kind of like I've been walking on this road and like I start the journey super purposeful, super clear about where I'm going. And then as I'm like going along the way, I like start dozing off and like going to sleep, and I'm like, where was I going? Like I start forgetting, and it's like I'm falling asleep. And then like I have to tap myself, I have to wake myself up, like set up some sort of system in place to like jolt myself awake. Like new cars, if you're like steering off the road and you're falling asleep, you're going over the edge, like it starts vibrating or making a loud noise. So those are super helpful like representation or symbols of what I'm talking about here, where we can, with a practice like that, we can jolt ourselves awake again and be like, okay, wake up. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing, And so for me, that's super helpful. For type 9s, that's super helpful. They're like the symbol or the manifestation of the person who falls asleep, like the person who goes to sleep to their own desires and dreams and wishes and purpose and destination that they want to go to. So for me, I have to constantly wake myself up to that. And for certain, during this season of confusion, having that practice gave me a lot of clarity. So I highly recommend it for you to journal and ask yourself, what do you want? Get clear about that 5-year vision. Maybe it's 3-year, but get clear about that, because I do feel like that can really shift things for you. And then trace it back. What I do is like, I'm like, okay, in 5 years, if that's where I want to be, what will 3 years look like? I think 3 years is also even more beneficial sometimes, because it's easier to kind of think 3 years ahead than 5 maybe. But 3, like let's say you're doing 3 years. Okay, in 3 years, I want to be there. So in the halfway point of that, in 1.5 years, where do I think I should be, or what things should I be doing to move myself towards that vision? And then what should I be doing this year, and then this month, this quarter, like keep bringing it down to like smaller sections, smaller components, all the way down to like this day. What do I need to do this day, today, to move myself towards that vision? And so for me, doing that during the season of, for lack of a better word, depression, it helped me a lot. So that's kind of the first question, what do you want? The second one is, what are you thinking? I kind of talked about this, it's pretty self-explanatory, but try to get your thoughts down to paper instead of having them be in your head and trying to like kind of follow them and come to a conclusion there. Put it on the paper and try to figure it out there. I think it's a lot easier. I think it's a lot more helpful. And when you go through a similar season like this again, I literally had to pull out my journals from years ago and just be like, remind myself of like lessons I've learned. I'm so glad I've kept journals, because I was reading some inputs from like 2016 and I was like, I thought this? Like, what? How did 23-year-old me think this? Like, I was like, dang, like this dude like is helping me out. It's like it's like the past version of me because it's like we all have, I feel like we have super sane moments where we're like just super like on point, like clear. And then we kind of have like insane moments where we're like not super clear and not seeing things clearly. So when I have a version of me that was super sane and wrote something down and I look at what that version of me said, it reminds me of like, oh, that's what being sane looks like. That's what it sounds like. That's what it is. All right, let me think along those lines. So anyways, for me, having those journals helped me out a lot. And getting my thoughts down on paper helped me have a process that's written down that I can revisit next time I go through something like this. So I can just look it up. I also have a journal app on my phone called Day One, which I've been using since 2019. It's awesome. I have like 7,000 entries on there, and you can search something. So a lot of times I search keywords. I'm like, I'll be like thinking about something like, I don't know, like flow state, and I just look that up and I read all my entries on that topic. Anytime I use that word, that phrase, and I'm like, okay, this is like, it's like things you already figured out, so you don't have to think and try to figure it out again. So journaling on what you're thinking, I think, is super helpful, and it gives you the ability to look back at what you've learned. The next one is, how do you think you got in this funk? You got in this state? For me, contemplating that question was helpful in the sense of like, okay, I know what to not do anymore. I know how I got myself in this situation. It's like, I know that if I travel down this road, it leads here. And also I think getting clear about how you got here allows you to find the solution. So it's like, it's like if you go to the gym and you hurt your knee, and like it doesn't have, like a friend of mine was telling me how he got this really bad injury, but like he didn't feel it in the moment, and it was like until he left the gym and it was like 2 hours later or like even a few days later that like it really started showing. And so it's like that. It's like a delayed kind of thing. So tracing back to what led to that point, to that injury, is helpful to know so that you can either avoid it, you can learn more about it. Maybe you've been doing it wrong and that's why you ended up in that position. And just for me, like contemplating, okay, what did I do? Because I was fine before that. Everything started in like towards the end of December. And so I was totally fine. I was like probably at like one of my best kind of mental states I've had in a long time, October and November of 2021. And it's weird. Like I've never looked back at my life like any other season. Like I always felt like I've moved and progressed forward. So I never look back and I'm like, ooh, dude, like that's when I was like really on top of it. This is like the only time that I look back, and this is like absolutely the feeling I want to like avoid and not deal with anymore. Like where I go through a season where I look back at an earlier version of me and I'm like, oh, that guy was better than this, and I'm like, obviously growth has happened, but that to me has just kind of been like the dominant feeling. I'm like, dude, I wish I could just like go back to who I was like mentally. Like I wish I could like literally like, how the computer has, like Macs have, what is it called? Time capsule, I think. I think it's called, or time machine. Time machine allows you, so you can take your computer, let's say you're having an issue with it, but like you're like, oh, I didn't have this issue with my computer 2 months ago. You can time machine your computer, like all the settings, all the stuff on your hard drive. You can, boom, take it back, time machine, and it's like time jumping to the past version of your computer where your computer was like running more optimal. I'm like, I wish I could do that with my brain. But thinking about how I got here in this position, journaling on that has helped me be like, okay, I was like that. I was fine, right? I was doing great. I was on top of everything. And then I started thinking in these terms and along these lines, and I got myself in this position. So how can I stop doing this? Because for me, I kind of unfortunately started thinking along these ruminating kind of ways of being, a lot and it became a habit. Just like anything you do a lot, it becomes a habit. It's like it's almost like a mental like tick. It's like if I just keep doing this, like, you know, like, or like, you know how people get restless leg syndrome? Like if I just keep doing that, at some point it becomes a habit to just keep doing that, or like biting your nails. I unfortunately kind of got myself in a habit of doing that. So I have to like rewire the habit of the bad ways of thinking that I learned. And it's all for YouTube. It's so stupid, but I literally was trying to, everything started for me when I was trying to like make just like a certain YouTube video, and I just kept thinking about the topic like over and over and over and over again, just so like I feel like I immerse myself in it so much that then I show up here and explain it the best way possible. But then I like took it way too far. Like I didn't even know there is that limit in my mind where it's like, all right, you've thought about this enough. Now you're like kind of going way off in the deep end of just like repeating the same thing, which is so silly. But like that's what I did, and that's what kind of got me in this position. So now I'm trying to be like, be present, journal, breathe, you know, just keep it simple and things like that. So I think that's good for the journal part. The questions again were, what do you want? What are you thinking? And how you got in this position, how you got in this funk. And I believe answering those will help you out a ton. So let's move on to point number 3. All right, point number 3 is talk to a trusted person. Talk to someone about it. It could be a parent, could be your partner, specific other, significant, it's not specific significant other, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever, a trusted friend, a mentor, a coach, a healer, a therapist, a parent, and just someone who you feel like, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. I just want to make sure I deliver for you guys here. Someone that you just feel like you can trust. If they know what you're going through and like have gone through it, and I feel like that's even better maybe, but it doesn't even have to be that. It's like someone you trust. I've had so much clarity by just talking about it, and like I'm like super the type of person that just doesn't want to bother other people with their problems, but I had to kind of overcome that, especially because this has been so intense that like I just couldn't not talk about it, because I was like, guys, I need help. But I, have gained so much clarity and found it so helpful to talk to people, to my mom, to Victoria, to my friend Kyle, if you're watching this. I haven't actually talked to you about it that much, but maybe tomorrow when I see you. But yeah, talking about it has helped me be like, okay, all right, I'm getting my thoughts out. It's kind of like journaling, but in a different way. Or you can literally make a video blog, just talking to a camera, and it would kind of feel the same way. But talking to these people has helped me, sometimes it's just them listening. Sometimes it's just me hearing myself explain it, because in the act of trying to explain what I'm going through, I either A, see how silly it is, or B, I get clarity about in order to try to explain it to someone else, I get clarity about what I'm doing even more clearly, so that I can see the flaws in my own way of thinking. I can analyze it better. And ultimately it's just helpful to know that, okay, all right, I'm not going through this alone anymore, right? It's not that I'm like pulling those people down and making them feel shitty, for lack of a better word. I'm not trying to do that, and for me, I'm super mindful about how I, explain it, because I don't want to kill their vibe. But it helps me to know that it's no longer me like alone in my suffering. Now other people know, and just weirdly, just knowing that other people know that I'm going through this, it helps me feel more like I'm good, like I'm taken care of. I have people that, first and foremost, like God is taking care of me. For me, that's like foundation. But in real flesh and blood, like there are people, that know what I'm going through, that, got my back, and it just helps. Just knowing that you have that support. It's not even about them giving you the advice that's going to fix it, or or doing something that's going to fix it. It's just like knowing that they know. It's like I'm not alone anymore. I don't have to carry the burden, this weight on my own. It's so helpful. And like I feel like it literally shortens the time span that you are in a season like this. And if you don't have someone like that and people like that in your life that you feel like you can confide in, that won't judge you, that you can trust, that you can be vulnerable with and feel comfortable with, then look for a therapist. And if you don't have the funds for a therapist, then look for literally a video camera. Some of my best therapy sessions were talking to a camera. This is one of them. But I feel like, to me, that is so much like similar to a third person, the act of trying to explain to a third person, my thoughts. It's not as helpful, obviously, but it's very helpful, So journaling, do those kind of things as well, but definitely if you have the ability to talk to someone, and like I said, it doesn't even have to be someone who knows about this topic, but just somebody that just is like, I got, I'm with you in this. I got you. Like, you're not alone. Super helpful. And sometimes you just want to go through it alone. So that's up to you. But for me, it has helped. And finding that balance of like going through it on my own, dealing with it on my own, and then sharing with others as well, and inviting in that help. And it's funny because like I'll get texts from my mom or something, and it's like, oh, I was thinking more about, what you said about what you're going through. Here's some more input about how I think, maybe something you can try that could help. And so these are just like, even if I don't, try that thing, sorry mom, but like, even if I don't do that or something, Victoria's super spot on, my girlfriend, super spot on with the recommendations she gives. She does coaching and she does client work and helps people with similar things like this. So she has experience dealing with this stuff. And she's just a very optimistic person. And that input of hers has also really helped me be like, okay, because like, it's like when someone is so close to you, they almost know you as good or better than you know yourself. Like there are aspects of you that you don't like to acknowledge maybe as much, your shadow, but they know it. So it's like they can actually see more of a whole picture of you and guide you better sometimes, So, and, ultimately I think you can always talk to your heavenly Father, God, and I think that for me, that's always been like a refuge, a place, a shelter, that I'm like, okay, even if I'm going crazy, like I can still talk to God and have that conversation and feel the peace of God, feel His love, feel His support. And like, even if like, there was a time in my life I don't want to say I didn't believe in God. I believed in God, but I didn't have that like feeling of like relationship, like God is my Father, and I really got that a lot from like studying the teachings of Jesus, who became my main teacher and the main teacher, the ascended master that I follow. But basically like realizing that God is my Father has helped me so much to like feel more of a connection. Like, it's like, this is a person, not like a physical flesh person, but like a real entity, that I'm talking to, and has been super comforting. So it's like, even if which I feel like God ultimately always answers you somehow. But even if I ask him like, God, like, what should I do? Or how can I get out of this situation? And I don't hear an immediate, response. And obviously I feel like we have layers of, layers need to be shed for our psychic abilities to become so heightened that we like hear higher guidance, like super clear, super sharp, like just like that. And I'm working on that, but I feel like that's like a whole different topic and process. But the ego is still a lot in the way. So even if I don't immediately hear a response, I feel like in some shape or form, whether it's to somebody else saying something, a YouTube video that just pops on my feed, a teacher or book that I come across, or something randomly I'm driving and see a billboard and it's like the perfect thing I could have seen in that moment. through these different various ways, God always answers and always hears your prayers. And I think in some shape or form, he always comes through and meets your need in a way that specifically suits your situation the most. And obviously, I believe your conviction and faith is a huge factor in that. But also, going back to what I was saying earlier about the 12 steps, I've never done the 12 steps. I've read about the steps. But, one of the main steps, I think, if it's not the first one, it's probably the second one. It's like asking God for help, or asking that higher guidance, God as you understand it, asking that to help you. I think it's super powerful. And I think like for people like who have been through drug addiction, who are trying to recover, which is what, the 12 steps is those are the people that it's meant for. But honestly, I think anyone could benefit from it. Those who are in that like rock bottom position, they can relate to how impactful it can be to, even for people who are or were atheists, like this still has helped them. This just something higher, God as I understand him, whatever it may be. Maybe it's just like this universe idea or whatever it may be, just having that higher, like there is something good, love, capital L love, loving there. And that love is what I seek refuge in. That I think is so helpful. Like literally, if nothing else, just remembering that on a consistent basis and believing it and feeling it, I think can be life-changing. And that's actually something I do every morning. It's like one of my practices as part of this series is to just feel that love, feel the love of God. And you can obviously get that from humans as well, human love, but I feel like it's never going to be as, it's almost like there's like a yearning in our hearts that only the love of God can nourish and can feed. And so this is just like my experience, and it feels totally true for me, but may not be your experience. But nonetheless, this is what has helped me. And so I think for me, it's like talking to a person, a mentor, a friend, a parent, a significant other, God. All of these are super helpful. And I think God ultimately is like probably the most helpful because he's always with you, at least God as I understand him. So let's move on to point number 4. Okay, point number 4 is go back in your mind, trace your way back to a time in your life, and I hope you've had such a time, that you were super happy, super fired up, super motivated on purpose, super mission oriented, whatever like makes you the happiest, like your most, if it's for you, if it's being adventurous, if it's being fun, lighthearted, in a surrendered state where you're like just going with the flow, whatever like that highest self version of you is and feels like for you, trace your way back in your mind where you feel like you were that optimal self, you were your best self, you were like just like high functioning, you were like on top of your game, and you just felt the best consistently. Or even it could be a day, but just remember like, okay, that day, like what did it feel like? What did it look like? And then, but it's better if it's like a consistent time period, like a 3-month period. The summer of 2016 is when I felt the best, and this is what my days look like. And then trace your way back to what I just said, like what did your days look like during that time? How was your sleep? What were you doing? What activities were you engaging or not engaging in? Were you working at a certain job? Who were you hanging out with? What were you listening to? What podcasts? What books? What audiobooks? What music were you listening to? What activities were you engaging in? How often were you working out? All those stuff can add up significantly. They add up and significantly contribute to how we feel. So if we can trace back in our minds to a time where we were super high functioning, super like perfectly like just optimal, if we can do that, we can trace back, kind of like reverse engineer, okay, like that's what I was doing. Let me try some of those things. Maybe it's not all of them, like, because we obviously grow and go through different chapters, like, and certain seasons. And in some seasons, we just don't resonate with something that we did before, even if it was a good thing. Like, I used to go to the gym 6 days a week. Like, that doesn't really, like, that doesn't sound like something I want to do anymore. But, like, I can still be like, okay, like, working out, lifting weights, or like doing that type of workout, that type of strength routine, that was really helping me. Like, I really felt great. Okay, so how can I implement some of that into my life now? So tracing my mind back to certain times in my life, and it could be different, right? Like, it could be like, physically during this time I felt the best, mentally during this time I felt the best or most clear and like on top of my game, high functioning. And then during this time, like, emotionally, I felt the best. So, like, going back in your memory and using your memory as like a teaching aid to remember, okay, like, when I live like this, when I do these things, that's when I feel the best. Remembering that can help you start in a healing journey of, okay, let me implement some of these things in whatever form would be best suited in this current season of my life. And you will be shocked and amazed at how helpful some of those things may be. And if you have never gone through such, this is super sad. I hope that that's not the case for you. But if you have never gone through a season where you're like, I was feeling the best, that time, and like you're like, I've never felt great. Like I said, I hope that's not the case. But if that is the case, look up or look at some people online, that you feel like, whether it's a YouTuber, whether it's an author, whether it's whoever, an athlete, just an online, influencer, personality, whatever, whoever it may be. But someone whom you look up to and you're like, I feel like they're one of the happiest or like most joyful, most on top of the game, on top of their game type of people that I have ever seen. And then read their daily routine, read their habits, read their, figure out, okay, like, how do they live? What are they doing? What do they do for fun, for work? Like, okay, are they pursuing their passion? Like, whatever it may be. So even if it's not your own personal experience that you can trace back and look at someone else's that you feel like is living that in their most optimal self version. And then try to implement some of the things that they're doing in their life into your life and see how it feels. And sometimes you may have to try these routines and these lifestyle changes on as like a costume where you wear it for a while, or like an outfit that you try on for a while. You wear it and you're like, okay, it feels like this didn't feel good. When I implemented meditation in my mornings, I felt great. When I did the green juice, it didn't really make a difference. Whatever it may be, like, try to implement some of those things and just see how you feel. And I think you will gain a lot of insight from practicing something like that. Real quick, I'll share an example here regarding something that I feel like I used to do. And I got a lot of this understanding from the Enneagram. The Enneagram, as I said 1,000 times in this video already, is just a super powerful and helpful tool. But it has, also it has these very insightful, what can I say, like, tools or strategies or advice for each type to, like, okay, if you are of this type, try doing this and see, just advice to help them just in life, to help them grow, feel better, feel more optimal, and etc. And one of the things for me as a type 9 is, like, type 9 sin is every type has, like, what they call a sin, and it's kind of like their pitfall. It's like the thing that gets them. For 9s, it's sloth, but it doesn't necessarily mean laziness in terms of like, oh, they're just like chill all the time, like don't do anything, which could be the case for some 9s, but it's not always like true. But the sloth here is referring to laziness regarding looking within oneself and figuring out what one wants out of life, what you want, what are you passionate about, what are your desires, what do you want to do with your life. It's like we get stuck in our daily routines and habits and our life, and we become lazy at asking ourselves, okay, like, who do I want to be? Like, It's kind of like when you're a kid, you have all these dreams and visions, and as you get older, you get like stuck in the monotony of life. I think that's how you said it, of life, and you forget all those things. But for sloth, for nines, it's like the sin and also the solution for nines. It's like the sloth that they have regarding not wanting to look within and then waking up to that. But I'm saying all that because so the Enneagram suggestion, one of the Enneagram suggestions for that, for overcoming that, is figure out what you want and then take productive action on your own goals, and for me, what that looks like also is like so first figuring out what I want, which we kind of did that in that journaling step, figuring out what I want, and then realizing based on the Enneagram wisdom and knowledge that, okay, I have this tendency, this sloth, to die or go to sleep to my own desires and wishes out of life. What do I want? But the solution or the antidote to that, or basically the virtue of nines, which is like the opposite of the sin, is right action. Is this ability to know absolutely what would be the best thing to do, like what is the right action, what task, what things should I get done, and being able to have the persistence and know that you can get it done. But for me personally, and not to get like super deep into like Enneagram stuff, but anyways, there's like the wings that are next to a type. So these are like whatever your type is. You also have some attributes of these types. And then there's also like two points that are connected to each Enneagram point. That one is the point that the Enneagram type goes to when it's stressed out. And then the other type is the point that the Enneagram type goes to, your Enneagram type goes to when it's healthy and high functioning. So you can also, this is super advanced Enneagram though, what you can do is draw strength from the stress point. So basically whatever the stress point is, for me is the point 6, which is like the stereotype of the person who tends to anticipate future like negative things and get themselves in anxiety through that kind of negative oriented thinking, pessimistic kind of thinking. Through the high side of that, which is thinking in systems, thinking in optimization of like processes, and just also feeling grounded in one's body. I can pull from the high side of 6 and implement that. So I have learned through the Enneagram wisdom just so much like helpful things that I can do to kind of help me put myself in the best position possible. And for me, I know as a 9, it's to take action, it's to take that right action, figure out what I want and take right action. But from the high side of the 6 point, and I know if this is not making any sense to you at all, don't worry about it because it's besides the point. The point is, I know for me from the 6 point is, what I know is like, I know systems and thinking in terms of systems really help me. I am really good at routines. If I have a routine, I have meditated every day for 6 years now. And that's all because that's not willpower for me. It is to get that set up, that routine set up, but it's because I am such a creature of routine and systems. Like if I just have a system and I used to be really good at this with workouts too. When I used to buy a workout routine from someone and it told me exactly what to do on what day, Wednesdays hit this, Thursday do shoulders, Friday do arms, like whatever it was, just arms only, never legs. I'm just kidding. But when I had a workout program like that was specific like that, it was a process, it was a system, I functioned so well, and I still do. And so for me, I know that I can best take action when I have that action as a part of the system and as part of the process. So what I do is, okay, I want these high level kind of goals, right? Like I figured out I'm overcoming my sloth and have looked within and figured out what I want. Okay, what actions are going to get me there? So I know that I can take action and that I can initiate and make shit happen, for lack of a better word. And so I also know that systems, thinking in terms of systems and processes and creating a framework within which I take my action. So, okay, let's say I want to have this YouTube channel. Okay, what are the actions, which I haven't been doing a great job at this during this period of, this 4-month period of confusion or whatever you want to call it. But I have this channel, I want to grow it. And so what is the action that's going to get me there? Okay, well, it's making more videos, making better videos. Okay, what are the processes? What are the action steps that go into that? Writing out each action step that is involved in that. Outlining, setting up, shooting, editing, exporting, posting, description, keywords, all that stuff, thumbnail, all that stuff. And then putting that into a weekly template. Okay, on this day I do the outline. On this day I set up. On this day I do this. On this day I edit. On this day I post. Doing that for me helps me a ton. And so what I wanted to say, and I've had seasons in my life where I did that to a T and I felt so good. When I had that process, when I had the system and I was taking action within the system, I felt great. And so for me, I know, and I've learned a lot of this from the Enneagram and just like trying to gain as much wisdom from it and apply it to my life. I know that for me, I function best when I have that process and system and taking action in it. So for me, when I'm trying to look back at a time of my life that I was feeling awesome, I think about a time that I was doing that. So based on Enneagram, I can look back at a time in my life that I was applying its knowledge and gaining fruits from it. And then I can think back, okay, how am I not doing those things now? And what things can I implement in my life now from that understanding that could help me get back on my feet and get back to that state that I seek to be in. So that's kind of like my spiel on the step 4, I believe it was 4, of like get back in your mind to a time that you felt great and try to do some of those things. For me, that's what it is: systems, action. And I heard a quote. So I recently discovered or started watching this channel. Super great channel, highly recommend. It's called Better Ideas. And I really resonate with the guy that runs it and what he says about different stuff. But he was talking about this quote from Richard Rohr, out of all people. Richard Rohr, who is a Catholic pastor, priest. I believe he's Catholic, I'm not sure though. But anyways, he is actually one of the best teachers of the Enneagram. And who would have thought? But like Enneagram, I'm telling you, it's very spiritual as well. So he, in his pastoral role, uses a lot of the Enneagram wisdom to keep gaining like greater, helping students and himself, gain greater self-knowledge and evolve and ascend. And so he has this quote that I heard the guy from Better Ideas quote, and I loved it. And it said that we do not think our way into new ways of living. We live our way into new ways of thinking. So basically, that's so much related. So action, so much related to what I was talking about action. But action can break you out of, it really can take you out of depression. Action, or rather inaction, can really make you feel disempowered. And if you want to feel like miserable, a great recipe is to just feel disempowered, like you can't do anything, like you're apathetic and you're helpless and you feel like a victim and you feel like you have no agency over your situation. You don't even feel like you have choice over like your thoughts and what you think or how you feel. So that is a very good way to just feel miserable. And actually, Joey, I believe his name is, from Better Ideas, has a video called How to Be Miserable for the Rest of Your Life. And honestly, it's like it's satire. I think that's the right term for it. It's satire, but it's so like it actually sends the message better in that way than it would have if it was like just telling you like what not to do. But one of the key things is to like feel like a victim, and it's action that can get you out of that. So even if you don't feel like it, it's sometimes like when you're going through those bouts of depression or like those funks or those ruts, you may not feel like doing what's best for you. Like what may be best for you is going for a walk, around the neighborhood, or going for a walk in the park. And you may not feel like it, and what you may feel like is binge watching TikToks. But that is not the best thing for you. And so sometimes you have to force yourself in new ways of acting so that you can start thinking in new ways based on those actions. So it's like, as you take the action, you are rewiring your mind. It's like once you go bungee jumping once and you do that once, you're like, oh, I've already done that before, so I can do it again if I want to, which I hate that type of stuff. So I even if I go, I'm probably gonna be like, I knew I shouldn't ever do that. Like I hate jumping off like cliffs and stuff like that into, lakes and stuff. It's like, to me, I'm like, I'd rather just swim in there, instead of jumping. But to each their own, do whatever floats your boat, whatever pings your pong, whatever that is. And so if you like jumping off cliffs, like, by all means, do that. But my point was, when you do these new actions, you take these new actions, you are acting your way into new ways of thinking. Like you're rewiring your mind instead of waiting for the thoughts. And I think Joey, the guy from Better Ideas, which I highly recommend his videos on this exact same topic. I think the one I watched was How to Get Out of a Rut, and it was like from 5 years ago. But it was awesome. I loved what he said. It was super short and sweet and to the point, unlike my video. But for me, this is more like I'm just talking to you guys like a friend and just hanging out. But he was talking about how, like, if we are waiting for an epiphany, some sort of like, because I definitely have been doing that. Like, I've been buying a ton of books, reading, watching stuff, and like trying to get that one like epiphany. Like I'm looking for. I'm like, if I just get that like one aha moment, then this whole thing is gonna be over. It's like a magical wand that if I just and it's like a cloudy sky and I'm pointing this magical wand and I just do this one magic trick and then boom, all the clouds clear and it's like everything's gone. It's most likely not going to be like that. And if I'm waiting for that, I'm probably going to be waiting for a long time. But what Joey was saying was like, dude, just like act your way into new ways of being and thinking instead of waiting for that. And Victoria, my girlfriend, was saying that also. But sometimes I end up not listening to my girlfriend and end up listening to some random guy on YouTube and listening to that instead, which is something I'm working on. But we're all getting better. So that's the goal. And you can act your way for 1,000 times out of depression into new ways of thinking instead of waiting for that epiphany to come, waiting for that revelation to come. It may come, but it actually may come through the action versus waiting for it. So action can bring you out of desperation, depression, just ruts and funk. And so I know you're not going to feel like doing it, but it can help a lot. So that's step 4. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Point number 5, read books that are, I love how I phrase this, by the way. Read books that are a symbol of sanity for you. Symbol of sanities, because when you're going through one of these seasons, you're going to feel insane. You feel insane. I felt insane. Because it's like, compared to how I was and how I felt, I feel insane now, comparatively to that. So for me, is like one of the things I do is, and the reason I put those books, which once I changed my camera battery, I kind of moved the angle a little bit accidentally. But what's cropped out here is this book here, which to me is like the highest book I've ever found. Like it's my number 1 book. It's A Course in Miracles, and it's a channel text, but it's immensely powerful. To me, it's my main spiritual text. A Course in Miracles, and then next to it is Letting Go. But those are just 2 examples. These books for me are a symbol of sanity. Like, I know that the ideas in here are like, okay, this is what sanity sounds like, and this is what sanity thinks like. The Power of Now is another one. I wrote some down here. I personally like A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Recovery by Russell Brand. Talks or books by Jim Rohn on YouTube or Audible or wherever. And then another book is Codependent No More, which early at the very beginning of the video talks about codependency. That is the best book on that. That book changed my life like hugely and drastically. So I highly recommend it. Autobiography of a Yogi, which obviously if you've ever been into yoga, if you've ever just any sort of like being into spirituality, you have probably heard that book. I have heard about it and I had heard about it for a long time, had just never read it. But recently I started listening to the audiobook of it that I had for a long time on Audible. And I am really, really enjoying it because I love learning and seeing what spirituality looks like when it's lived out for someone like that. You know, it's like, because it's like, what does it mean to live a spiritual life? There are some people that, like, I used to be one of these people. Oh, like, to be spiritual is like tarot cards and astrology, and you have crystals, stuff like that. But that's like mainstream pop culture spirituality. Like, not that, like, I love astrology, not gonna lie. But like, if you are really a seeker, you will end up going deeper than that. Like, there are more levels to this. And for me, Course in Miracles is like the deepest path. I personally, it's my path. I'm not saying it's like the best path. If it's your path, you'll know it from like I feel like the very first time reading the book. But for me, that's my path. That's to me like deep spiritual work. And it's like, I'm always amazed to hear about how other people live out like true spirituality. And like the Autobiography of Yogi, for me, is a great example of like what it looks like and somebody who really lived it out. And I really relate to, it's a lot of like the chapters I'm in are actually, I'm going to make a book review. One of the main motivating factors for me to read that book is because I want to make a review or summary about it. But one of the main things I love about that book is when he shares his stories of meeting with his masters. And these masters have so much wisdom to share with him. But what I love is their balance of like worldly duties and spirituality. Like how, like not neglecting these because you're like spiritual or like, you know what I mean? Like being in the world, but not of it. That's to me, like, I want to be like that. I want to be in the world, very much a human being, because I have a tendency to get way too airy-fairy and mystical and like lose my footing and just go out there and like be in the cosmos. But grounding into this humanness, being here and realizing that like the work is here, the beauty is here. I'm meant to be here in this. If I wasn't meant to be here, I wouldn't be here in this flesh, in this, you know, body suit, and be this character. Like, if I wasn't meant to play this game of life, I wouldn't be here in the first place. So for me, like, that's literally something I have to remind myself. And I love that his teachers talk about that a lot, because, you know, if there's one place in the world that people can completely devote their life into spirituality and like neglect every sense of like worldly stuff and duty, it would be India. And so to kind of like see their perspective of like emphasizing that balance, to me, is really cool. It's been helping me a lot. So anyways, that's the Autobiography of Yogi. And the last book that for me, like, I mean, there's a ton more. I just made that list pretty quickly off the top of my head, is a book called Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. Chase Jarvis is a very famous photographer / entrepreneur, someone whom I've actually met in real life. I'll put a picture of us together here. So I really, I love Chase Jarvis. I've been following his work ever since I started getting into like videography and, you know, making videos and whatever, like just creative work. He was one of the people that I really resonated with. And he has this book called Creative Calling that I love. It's about basically exactly what it says, creative calling. Your creative calling, to how to pursue it, how to find it, how to discover it, how to find that craft and cultivate it, and possibly turn it into like your main income, you know? And so for me, that book is another great book. But to me, those are just some of the few that are a symbol and they act as a representative of sanity. And when I'm going insane, I try to pick up one of those books or many others like them that I have in my library or my Audible library and try to read them, listen to them. And it's a reminder, you know, and it helps me get back to that state. So Course in Miracles is actually what I've been really getting back into lately, because I kind of avoided it for a while because I was like, I need less spirituality. I need more like earthliness. And I really like this album by Trevor Hall called In and Through the Body. Basically, it's his own revelations of like, he could be like me, where it's like it's super mystical and kind of like, oh, it's all about the divine and out there and God and like the cosmos and the mystical. It's like one with everything. But bringing it down to earth, like the work is here. The work is to be in this human. It's in and through the body, not, I'm just gonna leave and just like, that's gonna happen when you leave the body, when you're dead. You guys probably like, what are you talking about? Of course, like, we're human. But for me, I can get like super lost in that spiritual airy fairy stuff. So I have to really ground myself. And that album title really resonates with me. But anyways, I have been trying to keep my foot on the ground, stay here. So I had been avoiding that, but I forgot how grounding it is for me actually when I do the workbook. So I've been getting back into that, and can't recommend A Course in Miracles enough, can't recommend these books enough. But let's finish off the video by shouting out another one of my videos. All right, point number 6. I said, keep it simple. I just wrote down, keep it simple. That's the last point in this very long video. It takes a lot to put yourself back together when you've been going crazy for a while. And it's so true that it is really easy to destroy and much harder to build. It's kind of like a house of cards. But nonetheless, these will help. The last point I wrote down, keep it simple. I had just made a video called the helpfulness, I think, or the importance of the mindset and the motto, keep it simple. And keep it simple basically for me has been a life-saving mantra lately, because a lot of my issues started from me overcomplicating things. Like, I'll overcomplicate just super simple stuff like breathing. Like, I'll be like, I'm trying to breathe and like I'm trying to make it like super spiritual. I'm like, okay, like inhale like this, really take it down to your belly and wait. And then, which is like great to learn and practice. But when you get stuck in that mode of just overcomplicating everything, it gets to a point where you're like, where I couldn't even like take a simple breath without like thinking 1,000 thoughts of like how I should be doing it. And it's really an uncomfortable thing to do, And so for me, keep it simple has been a very helpful mantra. Just keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. And I have to say it like to myself, I have to remind myself of it often, because when I don't, I fall into this trap of overcomplicating, thinking way too much about it, and it's just not a good situation for me to be in. I don't like it, and there is really I realize there's way more value to be gained from keeping things simple than making them complicated, and it's just not the type of life I want to live, where I'm just constantly making everything overly complicated and living in my head versus living in the moment. So that is the last point. I hope that these lessons help you a ton. I wrote these as kind of notes to myself, and I'm still very much still going through this season. I have been getting a lot better thanks to these. As you know, I've been kind of on and off from my channel, which I really hate now that I think about it. And it's really helpful for me to be consistent with this, because sometimes I'm like, well, if I don't feel like it, maybe it's best that I don't do it, because maybe that's like a sign. But I'm realizing I'm not, when you're feeling super aligned and sane, and then you have a feeling I shouldn't do something or I should do, you should trust that feeling. And you should definitely follow it, because that's truly an intuitive feeling for the most part. When you really know you're connected and tapped in and tuned in and turned on, as Abraham Hicks would say. But when you're insane, chances are your feelings are very much rooted in that kind of sense of confusion and insanity. So it's best to kind of be okay, what would my sane version do? If I was my best self, what would he do? What would she do? And so for me, being more consistent with the YouTube, but not just that, but just, doing things that I know will be good for me even if I don't feel like it. These have been important lessons for me. But what I want to say here is that these are very much still lessons I'm learning and I'm going through, and just things that I have learned from these past 4 months that have helped me, because now I'm literally a trial and error. Like, okay, I try this on, see if it works. If it doesn't, I'll discard it, try something else. But these are the things that have helped me and that have worked for me and that are continuing to do so. So I wanted to share them with you. And I am very much still going through this season. I'm not fully out of it. I'm a lot better, thank God. And thanks to these practices. But they have been helping me a ton. And, even though I'm still a work in progress, I still wanted to hop on here and share these with you. Not just as a reminder to myself or a future version of me who may go through these at some point, sometime, but for any of us that may be going through a season like that. Other videos that I think are super helpful are the 2 videos by Better Ideas. They're both titled something like How to Get Out of a Funk or Out of a Rut. And I think they're super helpful. And I think that a lot of his videos are actually helpful about this topic. I was binge watching his channel yesterday or last night, and so it's fresh on my mind. But nonetheless, I was wondering if I should wait. That sounded like those pedestrian lights. Wait. But I was wondering if I should wait to make this video when I'm like fully out of the season. And I was like, bro, like, no, like part of me wanted to be out of it fully so that I can be like, guys, I went through this and then this is what I learned. And here's, the distilled knowledge for you. And maybe I'll make that video when I'm fully out of this weird season. But until then, I still was going to show up and make this despite not feeling like I'm fully out of that state. Because I feel like it's more authentic, I feel like I'm fresh in the moment, and like in the experience. So I feel like that actually adds to it versus take away from it. But if I learn anything else about how to get out of this, I will definitely hop on here and share, because there's nothing more that I would like to talk about than how to get out of such a state. But definitely these tools, the videos by Better Ideas, Course in Miracles, these books have helped me a ton, and that's it for now. So I hope this helps. If you have gone through such a season and have found tools that have helped you, please share those with me in the comments. I would love to know. I am genuinely interested and would love to hear from you. And with that, much love. I hope that this helps. I hope that you gain value from this video. And if you have watched this super long video, this may be one of my longest videos ever, which is funny because it's one of my shortest outlines, funny enough, but it's like might be the longest video I've shot recently for sure. But if you have watched it this far, thank you so much for giving me your time. I hope that you gain value from it. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe so that helps my channel show up more on your feed and the YouTube feeds of other people who may receive value and benefit from this video. And also like it, because even though YouTube doesn't really show like dislike counts and stuff like that anymore, but still very much takes those into account when it comes to what videos to show to others. So if you like this video, it will help it show up to other people on their homepage on YouTube. So thank you for watching it. Thank you for watching this video. Again, my name is PJ. I hope that you gained a ton of value from this. And I am very happy to be on this journey with you. And I thank you so much for watching my videos. It really means a lot. And I'm very, very appreciative of it. So thank you for being with me. And I hope to see you guys on my channel and in my future videos. Until then, take care, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.